In 1683, Thomas Morgan of Penrhos, Edmund's father, received a heraldic visitation, a type of upper-class census, whose purpose was to validate the family's coat of arms and pedigree. The herald was Henry St. George, Clarencia King of Arms. Such was Penrhos. With that heritage, Edmund Morgan of Penrhos, the alleged victim of Charles, was no ordinary person. He was certainly classified as a gent, as was Charles Williams, meaning that he was at least a man of means. The duel is reputed to have occurred in 1670, when Edmund was aged 29 and Charles 37. In 1600, Penrhos had been bought by Edmund's great-grandfather, Edward Morgan. He was the son of William Morgan of Llantarnam, who owned Pentrabach and was the first Morgan to acquire Llantarnam Abbey. Although Catholicism had waned since the Reformation, William was a notable Catholic in the Morgan family. Indeed, another South Wales Morgan was a man at the centre of the Babington plot of the 1580s, a plan to assassinate and replace Elizabeth I with the Catholic Mary Queen of Scots. This plotter was one of the many Thomas Morgans, who Arthur Clarke, in the story of Monmouthshire, says, "Among those implicated and arrested was Thomas Morgan, born in 1543, of a right worshipful family in Monmouthshire. He was probably the son of William Morgan of Llantarnam." Well, if that was the case, then duelist Edmund Morgan was a direct descendant of the plotter's brother, who was William's son, Edward Morgan of Penrhos. Now here's more on the family trees of Edmund Morgan and Charles Williams.
Now we need to consider the relationship between the alleged duelists, Charles Williams and Edmund Morgan, supposedly cousins, but they weren't quite, and I'll try and explain that. The key person in this is Catherine Prosser. Her mother was Margaret Prosser, and her husband had died. She was widowed, and she married the great-uncle of Charles Williams, William Thomas. Now, if we look at the Williamses' family tree, Charles, of course, was the son of Thomas Williams. Thomas Williams inherited his uncle's fortune because William Thomas had no children. If we come over and look at the Morgan's tree, Edmund Morgan was the son of Thomas Morgan and Florence Morgan. Thomas Morgan was the son of George Morgan and Catherine Prosser. And as already mentioned, Catherine was the daughter of Edward Prosser and Margaret Prosser. So there we have a relationship that is a relationship, but they weren't close cousins.
In addition to mansions, the Morgan family was littered with titles. Many were knights, MPs and or sheriffs, but that one Thomas Morgan, who in the literature of history is called Thomas Morgan of Llantarnam or Baselig, is perhaps the most politically intriguing of them all. A committed Catholic, Thomas was a confidant and spy who coded treasonous messages from Mary Queen of Scots that were intercepted and cracked under Elizabeth's Puritan secretary and spymaster, Francis Walsingham. This resulted in the imprisonment of Thomas Morgan in the Tower of London, and then the Bastille, before he was sentenced to death, a sentence that was not carried out. Mary, however, was beheaded, and among other plotters, Anthony Babington was hung, drawn and quartered. Another Thomas, but with the surname Thomas, was Charles' great-uncle William, who died a year before Charles was born. Included in the will of the great-uncle William was the annual funding of 2 scholarships at Oxford. Now, we've found no record of Charles' education, but it appears reasonable to speculate that Charles may have benefited from the foresight of his great-uncle. Less speculative in understanding Charles' road to success are the records portraying a young Charles under the wing of the influential Mansell family of Margam and Britton Ferry. The Mansells may have viewed him as their protege. He was certainly very close and asked to be interred near Thomas and Edward Mansell in Westminster Abbey. Ironically, the Mansell family had been connected to Edmund Morgan's family by the marriage of Edmund's great-great-grandfather William Morgan of Llanfrechfa to Elizabeth Mansell of Margam, in another link, if a slender one, between the alleged dueling adversaries. Upon the death of his father, Charles' elder brother William Williams would have inherited most of the estate, including Castle Villa. But Charles was left some properties. Interestingly, he wasted little time in selling these properties on to his brother. Did this signal Charles' intention to leave Caerleon? At that early stage, in 1666, was it a sign that Charles saw his future in something other than property ownership? Wherever Charles was after 1666, there are strong indications that he was operating from London, no more than 10 years after his father's death and 6 years after the alleged duel date. From London, Charles was soon to be making a loan to Sir Herbert Evans of Pencraig now. Charles is said to have fled to Turkey following the duel in 1670, and Bradley's work calls him a Turkey man. But the Pencraig loan document shows he was making money much closer to home in 1676. Now back to the duel. Formal dueling was an activity derived from the code of chivalry of medieval knights. It rose to prominence in the 16th and 17th centuries. Dueling was about honour, and when taking place, it was usually between people of note, whose reputation was important. Dueling had its own gentlemanly code of conduct, and didn't usually result in death, though blood was often drawn. The finale of a duel could even be an apology. Dueling was, however, illegal, but there was a legal means of redress for injury to a reputation that could be obtained through the court of chivalry. As an example of the gravity with which honour and reputation were viewed, an incident occurred at an alehouse in Llanfrechfa, which did go to that court. This was in 1635, and it may have even ended up there because an earlier duel didn't wipe the slate clean. A Thomas Morgan of Penrhos, Gent, complained that his brother-in-law, a Roland Morgan of Woolsnewton, had said that Thomas lied like a base fellow at the Llanfrechfa alehouse in October 1634. There was background to the allegation. Thomas and Roland had had a previous disagreement resulting in Thomas Morgan drawing blood from Roland. Could this have been in a duel? Given his home address and the date of this hearing, this Thomas fits the part of the father of Edmund Morgan, the alleged victim of Charles Williams. If this was a duel, could the sword used by Thomas be the same sword that went from his home, Penrhos, to Newport's museum in 1925, either with or without Edmund having used it against Charles Williams in 1670? The good condition of the museum sword suggests it has been well housed. The previous disagreement caused Thomas to pay compensation to Roland, because Thomas had stroken him and drawn blood of him. When handing the money over at the Llanfrechfa alehouse, the court record states that Thomas Morgan said, "Thou art a base fellow in selling thy blood," which caused Roland to say of Thomas, "He lied like a base fellow." Hence the court of chivalry came into it.